Make no mistake about it, President Trump still has a lot of tools, but I think it's the walls are closing in on President Trump. No matter if you saw him lose the vote and 6 Republicans cross the floor with Congress, then you saw the Supreme Court decision. We'll see how the Senate decision comes up, but I'm going to be on the phone full steam. And later on, I think in a month or so, I'm going to do a U.S. trip.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford, they're arguing the walls are closing in on U.S. President Donald Trump after a major symbolic blow to his economic and trade agenda late last week. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down many of his sweeping tariffs introduced under emergency powers. In response, Trump threatened to impose a new global tariff, initially saying it would be 10%, but then raising it to 15%. Most trade between Canada and the U.S. appears to be exempt from those tariffs as a result of CUSMA. Trump continues to rail against the Supreme Court's decision on Truth Social. This morning, he warned he could impose higher tariffs on countries that, quote, play games with existing trade deals. And in another post, insisted he does not require congressional approval to enact tariffs at all. So where does that leave things? Let's bring in our front bench. Joining me now, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is here, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Good to see you. Brian, I'll start with you. Are the walls actually closing in on the president? And if so, what does it mean for Canada?
It's a great line. I'm not sure I would go that far. I think it is always helpful for anyone that's trying to deal with the Trump administration, including obviously the Carney government, to go in with a sense that maybe the legal frameworks that are in place, maybe the agreements that are in place will be respected. And certainly I don't think anybody believes that will be the case if we're just depending on Trump himself and sort of his goodwill and his good word. So I think anything that can help people feel like they will actually have some type of a process that will be able to be followed within the U.S. and other institutions that will be able to chime in, I think that is always helpful. But as you can see in the messages Trump put out, he's certainly trying to squash that idea and basically say, no, that's not true. And anybody that kind of comes in with that attitude, I'm going to punish them. And you can see what he's basically alluding to with the idea that, I can do whatever I want, forget that. So he clearly can feel that others will come into the table now with the idea that, okay, you're going to have to start to follow some of the legalities around these frameworks, these agreements, and he certainly doesn't like that. So does it leave us with a complete sense of things are back to normal? Not at all. I don't think we can go that far. But it is a hit to Trump, and I think it is a little bit, it is a little bit helpful and gives a little bit of comfort to people that are trying to deal with the administration.
My sense, Lisa, is a lot of people could anticipate that he would not be happy with that ruling and that he would, try to apply tariffs in a different way. And it seems like the federal government tried not to be in the crosshairs of that. Like their response was fairly muted.
Well, I mean, if you read anything about Donald Trump, one of his rules is admit nothing and never concede. So even though he does have this Supreme Court decision against him, it's kind of irrelevant. I wouldn't be declaring victory. I mean, one of my favorite mantras we had in our government was, you don't talk about strategy, you just implement it. And I worry a little bit about how the Premier said the walls are closing in. I don't know whether or not commenting on U.S. politics is helpful to the Canadian negotiation or the Canadian stance, although it probably plays really well domestically. I don't even know how true it is. I mean, there's so many things that go into whether or not a president is popular, and it may not always be about the economy. So all that being said, I do think that it's an interesting development. I think it's important to note that the law is on the side of us when it comes to these kinds of things. But I wouldn't play too heavy a hand on what it means to Donald Trump and how he's going to approach these files by any means.
Benzie, Premier Ford did not seem to be not wanting to talk about this, in contrast maybe to his federal counterparts. We aired the little bit from the legislature today, but he was also on CNN basically saying something very similar. What are your thoughts on why he wants to talk about that?
I mean, Lisa's right. It's good domestic politics for Mr. Ford here in Ontario. And I think it also, he's enjoying the way this is rolling out. And I actually disagree a little with Lisa on this. I actually do think that Mr. Trump was badly wounded by this decision. It's a 6-3 decision. Two of the justices in the majority ruling are judges that Mr. Trump himself appointed. He's been railing about them and about all of the judges and saying, or all the 6 rather, saying how they're under the influence of foreign forces. His initial 10% tariff threat, then next day it escalates to 15%. And remember, those are only temporary. If and when he actually does get around to doing that, it can only be for 150 days according to the law. So he's lucky that he has a very weak Congress right now, or a pliant Congress right now. But tomorrow night, Vashi, when he delivers the State of the Union address, it could be the last time that he has such a weak or feckless Congress. Speaker Mike Johnson may be the least effective speaker, least powerful speaker in the history of the United States, or at least in the modern history of the United States. I'm not sure that this time next year, when Mr. Trump delivers the next State of the Union address, that Mr. Johnson will be the Speaker of the Congress. So I think he has a lot of challenges. I think Ford is probably guilty of optimism bias a little bit, saying the walls are closing in. But I don't think he's wrong that the midterms are going to be bad for the Republicans. Polls suggest that. And also to think that he knows that with dealing with Mr. Trump, sometimes it's best just to punch him in the nose. I mean, it's not like appeasing him works, because it's an irrational strategy. You're dealing with an irrational person, so the strategies are you can't have a rational strategy.
Last word to you on this, Tom.
For me, one of the most important things in that Supreme Court decision was the clear statement by the majority, and they even used that image, that only Congress can put its hand in the pockets of American consumers. You remember the hissy fit that Mr. Trump threw over the Ronald Reagan tape that was played during the World Series? He doesn't like being told that this isn't just money being sent by other countries into the U.S. Treasury. He doesn't like being told that it's consumers paying this, whether it's the price of a full-size car or your groceries. The average American has already figured out inflation is real. It's getting serious. It's hurting their standard of living. And they're starting to understand that they're paying for all of these tariffs in increased prices of the products and a slowdown of the supply chains and all the things that were put in place under good trade deals that made things less expensive for consumers. And so Trump has been able to pull off, I think, a lifetime of con jobs. This is his greatest artistry as a con man, getting the average American at the beginning to understand, no, this is other countries giving us money. Canada doesn't pay any of these tariffs. American consumers do. That was the nub of that Supreme Court decision, and I think that that's what rubs Trump the wrong way the most. The emperor has no clothes. The average American now is starting to understand that, and Trump, of course, is going to be railing and raging. I can hardly wait to see that pudgy little index finger pointing at the judges of the Supreme Court when he talks to all Americans tomorrow night. It's going to be quite something. I'm going to be making some popcorn.
They're still invited, Tom. Yeah, they're still invited. Barely, is what he said. Barely invited, yeah.
He wouldn't do without them. They're going to be the perfect foil for his rage.
Yeah.